It's actually a very good plane. You'd just be wasting your time, really. Here's why.
This video is sponsored by Warfunder.
Hey there, welcome back to Military Aviation History. My name is Chris, and for those that don't know, in my In Defense Of series, I look at aircraft that have been popularly dismissed or even maligned, and I explain the facts as well as the context, and then it is up to you, the viewer, to decide whether a plane's reputation was truly justified. And if you want to have a look at previous episodes, you will find them in the description. I'll have some thumbnails right here. Oh, and while we are doing the whole, of course, YouTube mumbo jumbo thing, like, subscribe, hit the bell so you don't miss new episodes. They tend to come out every Thursday of every week. Yeah, that's Military Aviation History Day. Some of you might remember that. Mad, yeah. The branding still hasn't improved. Look, I'm German. I don't know what I'm doing in branding. You know how this YouTube things work, so I don't have to explain it to you, but it's a great help, liking, subscribing, sharing, and so on and so forth. Yeah, just...
Alright, so what's the problem with the P-63 Kingcobra? After all, it's a good plane, and that's not me saying it, but many pilots at the time. Here are a few examples. The P-63 is easy to handle and responsive, quite delightful all around. The P-63 was an entirely different flying machine than the P-39. The P-63 proved a real improvement over the P-39 with more cockpit room, more power and more manageability. It was a dream to fly. With flaps down, powered way, the P-63 was superior to anything else in the air. An honest aircraft.
This plane is shaping up to be a remarkable machine, yet the US Army Air Force didn't use it as a fighter. They did use it as a target. Why is that? Well, one way to answer this is to talk about the pure tactical level, right? And that's going to be a little bit of a top trumps discussions, but please stick with me, it'll make sense in the end. And the other way is to look at this also from a force disposition and a strategic level standpoint. I will do both. Together that will give you the full picture, and then you can make up your mind yourself of where you stand with the P-63 Kingcobra.
Throughout this video, I'll also show you some great footage from our recent trip to the Legacy Flight Museum in Rexburg, Idaho. I filmed a full Inside the Cockpit episode on the Kingcobra, and if you are a Patreon channel member, you already have access to that episode. Visit that museum, by the way. It is great, and tell them that I sent you. Say hi from me. They are great folk that were very accommodating for filming and very understanding also of my propensity to nerd out over all the aircraft and not really wanting to leave. It was a good time. A really great museum. Go and visit it.
Okay, tactical level. Let's talk about performance. The Kingcobra is a solid performer on paper, no doubt about it.
The P-63 was powered by the Allison V1710, a liquid-cooled engine producing a maximum of 1,500 horsepower at 3,000 RPM, 61 inches of manifold pressure for combat power. With this it achieved a maximum speed which holds up very well compared to other fighters of the time, if we assume no external stores and a lightened airframe. And especially here also look at the wet figures that include the water injection of the P-63. Equally, to climb to 10,000 and 15,000 feet, the P-63 does very well compared to other aircraft. Let's check out maneuverability. Though maneuvering speed is more individual than aircraft performance, we can also see here that the Kingcobra does well in this category if you keep her within the speed bandwidth where it excels in maneuverability.
And these are respectable numbers, right? And compare them well to most fighter planes of the time, and you'll see why. But it is not the full story. Here is how one pilot phrased it.
The P-63 is a good fighter against the P-38, P-47 and P-51. At low altitudes it could outmaneuver and outclimb the P-51. Higher up performance suffered against the others. We can see how this performance differential evens out and falls against the P-63 as we go to higher altitudes. Here we must consider that America was flying high altitude bombing missions into Germany, and for that we needed a high performance, high altitude escort fighter to protect them. The Kingcobra did not have the high altitude optimization, and it had another major flaw, which was limited range. The internal fuel load was around 120 US gallons. With externals, the range could be increased of course, but not as much as with the other fighters. And there is really no way to add more fuel to this aircraft. I explained this in my upcoming Inside the Cockpit video, and it was really those concerns, the lack of high altitude performance and the lack of range, that ultimately resulted in the Kingcobra not being judged operationally suitable at the Eglin field tests. Though we could of course suggest that the Kingcobra has a use for different roles, but I will address that and why it is not really a good investment in the first place for the Air Force in the latter half of this video. Of course, at this point I have only given a cursory glance at the performance differential between the different aircraft, and we can say a lot about it. Of course, we can talk more about the specific aspects of the planes, the Allergens engine performance at high altitude, as well as the IFI supercharger. But to stay on track, I will pass off any sort of long format performance discussion on the P-63 to Greg's airplanes and automobiles. The main point here for me is that the P-63 doesn't offer a major selling point over the P-51 and P-47 on a performance level at altitude. Of course, there are caveats to that. I'm basically playing top trumps here in order to get the main point across. I'm aware of that, which is why I think it's also important to consider what the Kingcobra doesn't or does add on the force level. And really, when it comes down to this, the problems with high altitude performance, the problems with the range, and then if you consider what it actually takes to introduce this aircraft into the force, into the Air Force, we're really starting to see the issue here of why this made no sense. And as I go into that, consider this your chance to fly a P-63 and check the aircraft out yourself. And that's because the Kingcobra is one of thousands of vehicles that you can use in War Thunder. You can experience a fantastic collection of World War II aircraft, Cold War jets, and even modern jets. And there you can even take to the skies in voodoo machines or drive around in tanks and ships, though really we air power fans should call them by their real name, targets. If you want to sit back, engage in tense dogfights, and blow off some steam, War Thunder offers all the options. I personally enjoy the mixed battle arena, where I get to drive around in targets before I upgrade my life experience with an aircraft and deliver some accurate close air support. War Thunder also constantly adds new vehicles, voodoo machines, and targets. So you can play it on PC, like a true connoisseur, or you can join the fun via PlayStation and Xbox. It has full cross-platform integration, meaning you can play with your friends everywhere. Signing up is completely free, so make sure you use my exclusive sign-up bonus in the description to get a free premium vehicle, a free day booster, and an exclusive channel logo.
So far, the picture I have painted of the Kingcobra shows the usual give and take balancing act that you find in any aircraft. But now let us zoom out and consider the Army Air Force as a whole. For this, we first go to the most trusted of all diagrams, the timeline.
Going through this quickly, we can see the introduction of the P-47 and P-51 in 1942. Following this, in early 1943, we can see the first action in Europe and the Mediterranean with those aircraft, and they get also chosen for their respective roles. Much of this time is also used to iron out the kinks in each aircraft. In fact, the P-47 especially has a difficult record during this time. Then in 1944, the first bubble top versions start to arrive. Production orders go out, and by the end of the year, the majority of the fighter groups in the UK are or will be transitioning to the P-51. Now, where does the P-63 fit into all of this? The Kingcobra has a late start. The first order goes out after the first deliveries of the P-47 and P-51 to the Air Force. In the second half of 1943 then, the first are delivered and Bell is ramping up production. However, in 1944, after extensive testing, the P-63 is judged as not operationally suitable as a frontline fighter at Eglin Field. As production is already on the way, plans then emerge to send it to the Soviet Union. By the end of the year, these commence after more than 1,700 have already been built, but the plane continues to be modified as well to iron out some of the issues.
Here we can see two major issues. First off, the P-63 lags behind the Mustang and the Thunderbolt. And second, the operational suitability test did not go in its favor. And put both together, we are starting to have an issue. It is not necessarily the nail in the coffin. After all, the P-51 and also the P-47 had substantial issues when they were introduced into the Army Air Force, and that's completely normal. However, by May 1944, they were established aircraft, and that's more than just considering the performance aspect.
Let us assume the P-63 came out with no major issues. I don't think this would have changed much. there would not have been anything more than a token adoption in December 1944, which would have been cancelled in May 1945 when the European War ended. As a reminder, it took the other planes about a year to get operationally ready after being introduced into the force. Sure, the Kingcobra presents some advantages for certain scenarios. It is fast on the deck, has enough range for short missions, and has firepower. It can carry bombs, and it has also favorable ground handling for field conditions. But these aspects don't help the Kingcobra by the end of 1944. The Kingcobra needs to be significantly better than other aircraft to warrant a force structure change. And the Allies already had high-performance short-range aircraft doing interception or ground attack. Look at the Spitfire and then add Typhoon, Tempest and the Thunderbolt for ground attack. Does the Kingcobra have some advantages in the margins here and there? Yeah, sure. But these existing planes operate already, benefit from existing force structures, stockpiles, experiences and more. The Kingcobra's advantages are absolutely marginal when they exist, and it is also an unproven platform. Why introduce a plane that is good, but not better at such a risk, and one that has currently no role that it can fit into where you don't have something else that already does such a mission set? Also, in case you are wondering why I haven't spoken about this yet, can we assume that the legacy of the era Cobra didn't help make the Kingcobra any friends? Yeah, on an individual level, but honestly in my mind, if anything, that's a contributing and not a defining factor. As we have seen, the P-63 got some very favorable reviews by pilots, so that does cancel out the era Cobra's legacy to a point. But so far we've only talked about the tactical level. That's of course the level that gets all the attention, but it is not necessarily the deciding one in my mind. Operationally, the Kingcobra really has a troublesome investment proposition for the Air Force. US fighter groups were already covering all the bases with the P-38, P-47 and P-51, all of them very high performance aircraft. Incorporating the Kingcobra means starting from scratch with new systems and structures. And that means new pilot training and mechanic training. Then you have to establish a logistical infrastructure, you have to amass stockpiles, and you have to generate the organizational structures as well as the guidelines and cohesion that is required for Kingcobra operations. And of course we can argue that in May 1944, no one knew that the air war in Europe would be over by May 1945. Absolutely. But the strategic trajectory of the conflict was clear. And that's where we have to look at the strategic level and the trajectory of the US Army Air Force. In summer to late 1944, the majority of fighter groups in Europe, the only theater where the P-63 made any sense after all, were transitioning to the P-51. The Mustang was fast becoming the de facto standard fighter of the US. It was the plane that the US was going to finish the war with. The P-63, as a late contemporary to the P-51, is not going to substitute it. In fact, the P-51 was starting to substitute everything else that was out there. At this point, it is only the next generation of piston aircraft, or rather jets, that were going to take over from the P-51. The Mustang was a plane that the United States Air Force knew very well. It had all the operational and support infrastructure in place. And everything in the Army Air Force was gearing towards the standardization, from pilot training, fighter group organization, planning on future combat mass, industrial order. You name the buzzword, it is in there somewhere. And this is the result of basically 3 years of fighting, planning, producing, modifying, training, experience, and so on. This is what it comes down to. So then, giving away the Kingcobra to the Soviet Union is basically what saved the Kingcobra and the Bell Aircraft Corporation in this regard. It gave the P-63 a purpose it didn't have with the US, and that provided jobs and profit, well, kinda, you know, in the way that Land-Lease worked and didn't work, and it also kept Bell in the fight to try again. Well, of course they were also building B-29s at that point, but that won't last. And once they tried again, they then decided to hop on the jet train as well. They weren't really successful with that. They went with the Voodoo machines before being swallowed by Textron, but they did produce one of the most famous choppers of all time, so you gotta give them credit for that.
So in summary, would P-63s have been ready to fight before Germany surrendered? Yeah, sure. Would they have added a benefit on the tactical level? No. Would it have been worth the transition costs on the operational level? In my mind, no. Would it have been a good idea to revisit Army Air Force standardization, the industrial orders, the force organization? No. The Kingcobra was a good aircraft, but it was not the aircraft America needed at the time. And now I let you tell me what you think of all of this. If you agree with me, if you want to add something, maybe even push back against what I'm saying in this video, give it to me. I want to see what you think about this topic. And I hope that you enjoyed this video. Big thank you here to Andrew for his help, as well as Fred for Military History Visualized as well, patrons and channel members for funding research and filming trips that help make this content happen. For all of you, remember to also check out Warfunder with my invitation code. And as always, have a great day and see you in the sky.